So-called soft power in the form of U.S. foreign aid serves the dual purpose of solving problems while improving America's image. But the traditional approach that relies heavily on public resources is being replaced by a new model for development, one that relies on partnerships between government and the private sector. What are the implications of this shift? And can this emerging model deliver better results than the previous approach? That was the focus of a recent episode of The National Conversation, featuring a panel that included USAID Administrator Rajiv Shah. It's also the focus for this edition of Rewind.
The numbers tell the story. Since 2001, AID has formed more than 1,600 public-private partnerships with over 3,500 partner organizations with an estimated value of more than $20 billion with a B in public and private funds. The work of USAID and public-private partnerships doesn't just provide a bounce to our economy, and to our jobs picture, it also enhances our security. Soft power diplomacy, or I would call it smart power diplomacy, delivers life-saving help to desperate people and improves their image of America. It's an invaluable foreign policy tool.
We think about the future of engaging the world through developmental activity. We're not thinking anymore about just paying for infrastructure and services. Instead, we're now thinking about how do we build the kinds of partnerships that really, in a results-oriented way, can reshape the vulnerability in the world in which we live. We cannot pay our way out of extreme poverty, but if we engage businesses and companies, if we motivate scientists and technologists, if we use American innovation, whatever pocket of American society it comes from, including the government, and apply it to live out the founding premise upon which JFK created USAID, which was we tackle poverty abroad, we make our world safer and more secure. We believe we can end extreme poverty within the next 2 decades.
The conversation around private public sector collaboration and partnerships really has changed. It really has shifted now. And this is something that we at the Woodrow Wilson Center have been looking at and have found globally that there have been really 3 driving trends that have helped change the dialogue and perspective on this new development approach, looking at population. What's new about population variables? What does it mean? How do demographic trends have an impact? What does it mean in terms of consumption levels and vulnerability? You talk about the Philippines, you talk about East Africa.
Congressman, do you think, however, that there might be an interest in Congress, given budget constraints, to have almost everything get outsourced to private sectors in terms of aid and development?
Developed, I think, an understanding in Congress that by investing strategically in water, focusing our attention better, getting more out of it, and building partnerships with the community of faith, environmental groups, other NGOs, that it is money extraordinarily well spent. And I think the partnerships that are being described here with the private sector, with business, if we manage them right, I think Congress will go along with more.
You do a lot of work with maternal health and environmental security. Are there some places where the private sector doesn't really fit properly? I'm wondering whether, certainly in terms of infrastructure, building electric plants, things like that, where the private sector is doing that on its own, but something like maternal health, which is normally a government function in clinics. Are there places where the private sector isn't really the appropriate way to go?
So yes, there are areas where typically the corporate sector and a corporate-private partnership would miss, but that's where you have a think tank or the non-profit sector coming in to bridge that road. And this is what is exciting about the opportunity of these partnerships right now.
I think ultimately what's going to make the difference, whether it's child health or it's if you're one of those 99% of the scientists who think we've got a climate problem, or what's going to save the world is where we align these interests so that the billions of decisions that are made every day have the right environmental, economic, humanitarian interests that move there.
Clearly, that's what this is all about. Yes, aid by itself is not going to be completely transformative and can't control everything in the conditions on the ground, but it's about setting a framework that that is hopefully moving in that direction and is optimizing the U.S. dollars that we're investing in.
For more information, visit wilsoncenter.org. Click the Programs tab to find additional resources and more information about the National Conversation Series.